When it comes to how I review games, I've gone through a lot of changes over the years. My earliest professional review was for a game called Brutal that launched on PC and PS4 all the way back in August of 2016. Rereading that review now, it makes me cringe. At the time, however, I was attempting to present this idea that I was an authority on all things gaming, and that my opinion could be trusted as professional. That's something of a logical fallacy when it comes to reviews. As I've learned throughout the years with conversations with friends, random people at conventions, and colleagues, different people react differently to different things. There's no one correct opinion, and all of the knowledge in the world on a specific subject won't make your opinion more accurate. When I tell you that I didn't enjoy Phantom Fury, to subtly plug my latest review, wink wink, I'm not telling you that you personally won't enjoy it. I'm simply trying to offer you a different perspective and highlight any technical issues that could prevent you from engaging with something in the moment. Much like how games can be patched post-launch now, reviews are imperfect in that they can only represent a snapshot in time. That snapshot is informed by the current state of the game, the events surrounding its release, and even the mindset one has when going into a game. It's easier to express this about films, but have you ever watched something in theaters after months of hype only to be disappointed? Later, when you revisited the film years down the line, divorced from all those expectations, did you happen to find it was a new favorite of yours? We as humans ebb and flow over time, and our tastes and interests usually morph. While we cling to certain favorites, for example, I will always love Unreal Tournament, sometimes a game that was locked on infinite repeat in our youth will feel like an absolute chore 15 years down the road. When I started reviewing games, I was 28 years old and was attempting to prove myself to my colleagues in the audience at Destructoid. I was outspoken, a bit knee-jerk with some of my reactions, and unable to see beyond my own nose. I wanted to be the reviewer online that somehow proved certain games were garbage and others were misunderstood classics. Now, as I sit here at age 36, I really just want to help people find games that will make them happy. Does that mean I have some regrets from my past output? In some ways, yes. In a review I did for Dirt Rally 2.0, I wrote, "Talk about a slap in the face to longtime fans when bringing up DLC available at launch." I still agree with most of my thoughts on that game as a whole, but wording like that was informed by watching a bit too many YouTube critics act all high and mighty about their ideas. James Stephanie Sterling was very informative for me back in the day, and I took a few too many of their rants as gospel. I also recall a news piece I wrote at The Gamer where I ragged on Ubisoft for including Sam Fisher in Rainbow Six Siege, and I devised a very inflammatory headline. The main reason I wanted to bring up my review process is because I started to think about ways I could not only be transparent on Kill All Games, but ways in which I could better word myself when dishing out negative criticism. I don't believe that major AAA games should get a pass, as the decisions made for how a game releases are typically not in the hands of the development team. Indie games, however, can be made by a single person trying their best to put something out into this world that resonates with someone else. A bad game is a bad game regardless of how many people worked on it, but there is no need to crush the hopes and dreams of an individual simply because they couldn't deliver on their own ambitions. Have I ever held back a review because of a negative reaction? In fact, I did once back in 2020. A rather incredible looking game called Paradox Vector was making the rounds thanks to a push from 3D Realms' Realms Deep event, and I wanted to give it a shot. After getting my hands on a preview build, I wrote a rather positive piece that outlined my thoughts on what was currently there and ways I could see the game evolving. Sadly, those ideas didn't come to fruition. At the time, I spoke directly to the game's creator, Michael Schmidt, via DM, and outlined my issues with the game. In the years since, I've constantly wondered if he took those criticisms harshly or felt that maybe I had been deceptive in shining a light on the game, only to pull back at the last minute. Recently, I decided to ask him about his thoughts regarding the initial reaction to Paradox Vector, and how he has changed his approach to dealing with negative criticism in the years since.
I'm Michael Schmidt. I'm a game developer. I did a few games, Star Explorers, Paradox Vector, and most recently, Islands of the Caliph. I appreciated your specific feedback. You left a review and you gave very specific reasons why you didn't like it. Yeah. And I do remember that was a turning point for me in some ways. I realized, I think the second part of the game was sort of an afterthought. If I'm going to be really honest with myself, I had this whole first part of the game planned out and I worked on it a lot, and then for some reason I thought, this game isn't long enough. It needs to be longer.
Yeah.
So that was I guess that's maybe a trap a developer can fall into. Rather than improving on what it has, I just added content. And I thought some of the ideas were good, but I can totally see why it wasn't giving the same joy, because and you mentioned this in the review, like there was a bunch of like upgrades that you get in that first part, and that kind of stopped. I didn't add new upgrades, I just added more levels. So I'm forcing the player into difficulty without giving them the joy of finding cool stuff, and that was a mistake. Yeah, I totally agree.
How do you approach design philosophy, either before Paradox Vector or like now in the wake of that?
The game I did more recently, Islands of the Caliph, it's more of a RPG, and it's very different stylistically, but I think because of that experience with Paradox Vector, I knew the dangers of adding stuff later. Like I designed the whole game in the beginning, and I stuck basically to that design that I came up with. I didn't stray too far from it. And definitely it's been a much more successful game launch and release, and better reviews, more reviews, So I feel like I definitely learned and benefited from that experience with Paradox Vector, but I still feel like Paradox Vector got shafted.
I was just going to ask, how has Paradox Vector fared since you've released it?
It kind of petered out. Like there was a bit of excitement at the beginning, and I totally understand why it didn't, catch on and become a viral thing or whatever. I liked the concept so much and the art style. Like I was really convinced that art style, and coming out when the sort of boomer shooter craze started happening, it was timed pretty good, and so the potential I felt was right. But I think it didn't catch the interest of that same crowd, because vector graphics is a good decade and a half older than 90s shooters. So yeah, for me it was a very exciting idea, but it didn't resonate with the potential audience, I guess. Which is fine. It's a learning experience.
Yeah. Does Paradox Vector still get any sales, or?
Yeah, occasionally, here and there. It's not like I would say it's not every day. It's every few days, every couple weeks. But it was recently on sale. It was on the Lovecraftian Fest, and it got a bit of attention during that time. I started streaming it live during that sale, and that was nice. It was nice to see. I got a couple new reviews, so it's at like 49 reviews, and when it reaches 50, it kind of gets upgraded it'll go from positive to very positive. So if anyone wants to leave a nice review or a negative review, honestly, don't lie.
Yeah.
It'll still push it up, and it'll benefit me.
Have you done any major changes to the game?
I did. During the Lovecraftian Fest, I was looking at the older reviews. I looked at yours. I looked at a couple other people who said very similar things. So what I did, I took that second half and I kind of made it an optional thing that the player could do if they really wanted to. But if you just play the game straight through, it'll basically end at the end of that first phase, the first stage. But if you're a person who looks for secrets and finds stuff in games, then you'll be able to find that secondary area and take the longer route and have that extra content, but it won't feel like you're stuck. It was like your choice. You wanted to take the hard route, and you'll suffer the consequences.
One thing I've always told myself and to colleagues whose pieces I've edited is, even negative reviews help put eyes on something. Especially when you're in the game's media space, a negative review is almost like some form of reverse psychology for people. Readers will see you hating on something and become determined to prove you wrong. Paradox Vector was hardly a case of Cyberpunk 2077 where it launched in a dire state, but the game did need a stronger core focus to avoid getting completely buried. While I'm not entirely shocked to learn that the game has mostly fallen off, that's to be expected with a 4-year-old indie title. The better news is that Michael learned something from the experience and has done better since. Did my withholding of a full review help with that? I can't really say, but it's the one time I can point to where I held off out of fear for sinking someone. One title where I didn't hold back is the rather unique beat-em-up narrative adventure, The Friends of Ringo Ishikawa. I really loved the concept, and I thought its royalty-free soundtrack added a lot of charm to the experience, but there was a major issue with the Switch version. For whatever reason, putting your console into rest mode would soft lock your progress and prevent you from finishing the campaign. I didn't even realize this, and I kept playing for roughly 10 hours, maxing out my stats and completely destroying the balance of the game. It dawned on me that sleep mode may have been the culprit, so I rebooted my console and suddenly I could complete the game. Now, I didn't slam the game for an unintentional bug that no one could have anticipated, but the monotony of nothing happening for so long soured my own enjoyment of the title. Playing something for nearly 30 hours when the game is only meant to be 7 hours long starts to become a chore. Since I didn't want to destroy all hope for the developer, I scored it a 5 out of 10 and explained the issue. To my surprise, many people in the comments said they were interested in the game despite my misgivings. Where does that bring me on my overall philosophy for reviews? Personally, I try not to get too technical when discussing the artistic merits of a title. Performance means a lot to me, so you'll typically hear me discussing frame rates or crashes, but a lot of people do not notice that stuff. For that reason, delving into what makes a game tick and how it feels to play stands out to me as better topics to bring up. A lot of games don't have particularly deep stories, but if something blows me away, I'll even set aside some time for that. Music is also very big to me, and unless the graphics are completely mind-blowing, you probably won't hear me talking about that aspect. Ultimately, it is my experience, and while I can attempt to see things from different perspectives, I will not lie about liking or disliking something that might be unpopular. That wouldn't be fair to anyone, most of all the developers. You probably won't see me discussing RPGs all too often on Kill All Games, but the all part of this channel's title is very clear. Despite being based on an Unreal cheat code. I do enjoy practically every genre of gaming, and hope to continue experiencing those genres for years to come. I would also like everyone who watches these videos to look outside of their comfort zone and play something they never imagined they could have enjoyed. You may just wind up surprised at what you find.